This is the day the Lord has made.
And we will rejoice.
And
be glad in it.
yeah, you've been up half the night. He is going to teach today, and you're going to love it. Tell what happened to you last night.
Well, so I was studying, and today is Shavuot, which is what Pentecost is based on. Is based on Shavuot, 50 days after Passover, and so here we are, the 50th day, May 17th meaning victory. And so I'm studying, putting a little presentation together to teach today in the program. I get done 1:45 midnight, and I'm like, oh, great, I can go lay down now and get some sleep. That is not what the Lord had in mind. Have you ever had a sleepover and your best friend's there and you turn the lights off and then it's chatter time?
Yeah.
That is what happened all night long.
All night long?
Just all night long. He's like, hey, remember this part? How about this? It's like, oh, and hey, Chris, check this part out. Remember that where you read that part? This is how it ties in and this is how it works. I'm like, oh, okay. And now this part. I'm like, oh, Lord, I got to sleep at some point. I got to, I've done the study. I've shown myself approved. I'm ready to teach, but I'm tired now. He's like, it's okay. Check this part out. And so I get the whole, I was like, I've done all the things I can do in the natural. And now he's like, now let me tell you all the mysteries behind everything you've read and studied. I'm like, you couldn't have done that while I was sitting up outside. You got to wait when I lay my head on the pillow to he's like, yeah. Because I'm at the cool of the day. I'm ready. It's now. Let's do this. And so he's just all night long, he's just like downloading and talking to me. So
don't you love it?
I will try to be as coherent as I possibly can today.
You'll be great. You'll be great.
Well, this
You're
is probably
so
one of the
wonderful.
things you're most excited about teaching.
Everything I've taught in all the years I've been on teaching, I am most excited about what I'll be teaching today.
This is a book.
What I am teaching today, I'm extremely excited about it. I never would have seen it had I not started studying from a Hebraic point of view. I never would have seen it if I only focused in the New Testament, because there's so many things that our New Testament is based on in the Old that show us why things happened at the particular time in which it happened. I'll give you a little nugget here, but before we get started, we're going to talk about the Book of Ruth and why the Jews on Law Day. Today is Law Day, so the very first Pentecost, the law was given at the mountain. Okay, so they come up to Mount Sinai, they consecrate themselves for 3 days, and they hear the audible voice of God. We know they hear at least the first 10 commandments. We know they hear that. And then Moses writes all the law down, reads it to them, and then he goes up for 40 days. Okay, so why would you read the Book of Ruth on Law Day? It makes absolutely no sense.
And why the Book of Ruth? Why is it so important? It got right in there after Joshua.
It's like why is this so significant? Why would they do this? Well, it's all about family lineage. It's all about the family tree, and the family tree is much bigger than we realize as Christians once we really get down into it. And so we know that the family tree, this family tree of Abraham, leads to Ruth and Boaz. Ruth and Boaz, 3 generations later, have King David in their lineage, and then Christ comes from there. Okay? Now here's what's really interesting. Judah is the 4th son. The 4th son of Jacob and Leah. Why did he choose to make the leader where the king would come from and Jesus would come from the 4th son?
Because everything is about threes.
Exactly. So the number 4. Okay, let's go back to in the beginning. On the 4th day, what did God create? He created the light in the sky, the sun and the moon. So we would know seasons. How many seasons are on the earth, Dorothy?
3.
4 seasons.
4 seasons.
Yeah, 4 seasons. Summer.
Which one are you going to eliminate?
Spring, summer, winter, fall,
I'm
winter.
listening to his 3s, and I'm trying to find the 4th chapter.
And so here we are. So it's about knowing times and seasons. So in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light." So that light he's talking about is Jesus, and he created everything through that light. Okay, we've gone over that very in depth over the past year. He's created that light. Now he's creating the natural form of that light as a representation to us in our everyday life. Okay, so we see the sun, we see the moon, we see the stars, we're able to tell time. So there's four directions, north, south, east, and west. Okay, so it chooses the 4th son because it's about times and seasons, and it's about the earth. Okay? Now, the number 4 represents the doorway. Okay, you with me? Are you already seeing it?
Yep.
Jesus says, I am
The
the
door,
way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. I am the doorway.
Yeah.
4 represents the door. And so it had to be through the 4th son, through his lineage, that David would come with kings. And then after the king would come, then would come the King of Kings. Do you see it?
Yep.
I'm so excited about this, more so than anything I've ever taught.
Well,
And I'm going to teach you things you've never even heard of today based on the Jewish perspective of it.
I know it's going to be great. I just know it is. And so y'all don't go away because we're going to bring them in.
You also left out the praise part.
Oh, yeah, so Judah means
Hello?
praise. Judah means praise, and he says, you come into my courtroom with praise and thanksgiving. And so here we are, the name praise, Judah means praise. And so here we are, we come through with praise to my courts and thanksgiving. So you come through the doorway with praise. So Judah had to be the praise that was ushered in, because Leah finally goes, finally now I'll worship you, God, because this man's obviously not going to give me what I desire. He has I want to do it through you and my relationship with my sons that you gave me.
Well, there is a lot to talk about today. We're going right into Shavuot, Pentecost, and the Book of Ruth.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, from just looking at it from where we are right now, why in the world would the Book of Ruth have anything to do with the day the law was given?
Yeah.
Why would it have anything to do with the day that the Holy Spirit came and empowered Christians with the Holy Spirit to help us in everything we have need of? It makes no sense, you know? And so here's what the Jewish people believe and think. And so basically, let's just start with a verse, and we'll start in chapter 2 of Ruth, chapter 2, verse 11 and 12. It says, yes, I know, Boaz replied, but I also know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left your father and mother and your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done. Now, that sounds very familiar to another character in the Bible, okay? So she's a counterpart of another character. Let's figure out who that character is, okay? Let's go now to Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3. It says, the Lord said to Abraham, leave your native country, your relatives, your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you, curse those who treat you with contempt. All families of the earth will be blessed through you. How many families?
All.
All the families. So
Yeah.
all these families are going to come here through this. And so, okay, now a little bit later on in chapter,
12?
I think it's
Genesis?
actually 17. I got the wrong thing on there. But when Abraham was, it's actually 17. When Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai. Now, we talked about this before, where he says, I'm God Almighty. Serve me faithfully, live a blameless life, and I will make a covenant with you by which I will guarantee to give you countless descendants. At that, Abraham fell face down on the ground. Then God said to him, this is my covenant with you. I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. What's more, I will change your name. It will no longer be Abram, but instead you will be called Abraham, for you are the father of many nations. I will make you extremely fruitful. Your descendants will become many nations, and kings will be among them. Okay, so here we go. We have the promise. All right, so later on we hear in Ruth that Ruth is where the lineage and Boaz where David comes from. And so there's the king that they're talking about, this lineage of kings that's going to come forth through him, okay? So we have this here. So we got this introduction to Abraham. So we're going to learn about Abraham. Why is Abraham so important, okay? And so now we're going to go over here to Genesis 11. So we got to get the backstory about Abraham, okay? So we're going to go back before we're introduced to Abraham being given the command to leave the father's house. It starts in Genesis 11, 27 through 30. This is the account of Terah's family. Terah was the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Haran was the father of Lot. But Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living. Meanwhile, Abraham and Nahor both married. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Ishka were daughters of Nahor's brother Aaron. All right, so Nahor married his brother's daughter, his niece. Okay, and that's very important later when we get back into this. But Sarah was unable to become pregnant and have any children. So we get this information about the family. We get this information about who can and can't have children and what's going on. And so now we have the family tree. We have Terah, who had Abraham the firstborn, Nahor the secondborn, Haran the third. The youngest dies, and he has 3 children. He has Ishka, Milcah, and Lot.
Yes.
2 daughters and a son, okay? So that's where our story begins, okay? So here we are telling the story, and this is why Abraham was chosen, okay? Why was he chosen? Of anybody he could have picked, what made Abraham so important to where he could be chosen?
Because he believed God.
He did believe God, but let me tell you a secret in the Bible.
He's a friend of God's.
You want to learn a secret?
Yeah.
If you want to know why somebody's important or why a story is important in the Bible, read the story before it.
Okay.
The story before it is giving commentary on the story that's coming up, and the story after it gives commentary as well. So read the story before. What's the story before our introduction to Abraham? Do you know?
No.
It's the Tower of Babel.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we have the Tower of Babel. Genesis 11, 1 through 9. It says, at one time, all the people of the world spoke the same language, used the same words. As the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. Now, what's important that we notice that is the word settled there. They settled. They began saying to each other, let's make bricks and harden them with fire. All right?
Yes.
And then said, come, let's build a great city for ourselves. Who are they building the city for? Themselves. They're not thinking about anyone but themselves. With a tower that reaches into the sky, this will make us famous and keep us from scattering all over the world. Okay? So they're building this tower, and they have not so good motivations, okay? But then it goes on and it says, but the Lord came down, look at the city and the tower the people were building. Look, he said, the people are united and they are speaking the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other. In that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world. They stopped building the city. This is why the city is called Babel, because it was the Lord where the Lord confused the languages. These are the people with different languages. In this way, scattered them all over the earth. Okay. So
now, you know what that shows? Unity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you unite, nothing's impossible.
It is not, but when you got to unite for the right thing.
Yes.
And so they were uniting, one, to build a monument and a name for themselves, and they settled. They were not continuing to spread out and create more people the way God had desired the world to go forth. And so they settled. So what makes Abraham different is our question, okay? Now, we're going to go back to Genesis 11, to our introduction to Abraham. 11, 31, 32 says, one day, Terah took his son Abraham, his daughter-in-law Sarah, his son Abraham's wife, and his grandson Lot, his son Haran's child, and moved away from Ur the Chaldeans. He was headed for the land of Canaan. Now that's important where they're heading. They're headed to Canaan. That's important. I'll show that in a minute. But they stopped at Haran and settled there. What did they do? They settled. They stopped. The vision wasn't complete. The plan was, they settled, okay? Terah lived for 205 years and died while in Haran. So here we are. We have this great thing that's happened. We're introduced to this family that's on the move. And God likes the fact that they're on the move, but then all of a sudden, they settle, okay? And so now we get into Genesis 12, 4 through 9, and this is where Abraham gets the call and the Lord tells him what to do. So in chapter 12, verse 4, so Abraham departed as the Lord had instructed. Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarah, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all the people he had taken into his household at Haran, and headed for the land of Canaan. We're headed back to Canaan. Canaan is important. Wonder why Canaan is so important. We'll find out here shortly. When they arrived in Canaan, Abraham traveled through the land as far as Shechem. There he set up camp. Did he settle?
No, camp.
He
Set up
camped.
camp.
Temporary. Camp means temporary. So he went from being permanent to being temporary. This is important. This is why he was chosen. He is a temporary person. He's not a permanent person, okay? All right. But at the camp, beside the oak of Moreh at that time was inhabited by who? The Canaanites. Okay, we have Canaanites. We have Canaan and we have Canaanites. Then the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, I will give you this land to your descendants. And Abraham did what? Built an altar. What is an altar? An altar is a permanent structure. But who's the permanent structure for? It's for God.
Yeah.
It's not for man. So everything Abraham does in his life is temporary for man, permanent for God.
Yes.
That's what sets him apart. That's what makes him so different. Everyone else is building their own name. Everything else is building their own thing and expanding, but he is only building God's name in everything that he does.
It's like today, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, would you have ever seen that?
No.
Studying the Word the way we study? No, you would never know that. Okay, now we're going to move on a little bit.
I mean, I knew that's what he did.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it in this light.
Yeah, the light, yeah. Who had appeared to him. Okay, so he dedicated to the Lord who appeared to him. After that, Abraham traveled south and set up camp again. So he's on the move. So he camped, built an altar. He's on the move. He camps again in the hill country with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. There he built another altar and dedicated it to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord. Then Abraham continued traveling south by stages toward the Negev. And so here we are. What do we know about Abraham? Abraham is Terah's son. He is one of 3 sons. He has taken now Lot and Sarah, and they are moving from place to place, the original thing that Terah did. So he's following in father's footsteps.
Yes.
Okay? All right. So here we go. Now, what's really interesting now is Abraham made himself temporary structures. Abraham made God permanent structures. Abraham did not make a name for himself, but Abraham is performing a form of eboom. And now I know you're looking at me and you're like, what is eboom? That's not even in my Bible, because it's a Hebraic word for a practice that he was doing. And so now, what is eboom? Let's explain that before we go any further, because in Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 and 6, it tells us very clearly what eboom is. If 2 brothers, Dorothy, are living together on the same property and one of them dies without a son, his widow may not be married to anyone from outside the family, because she's family, okay? Instead, her husband's brother should marry her, have intercourse with her to fulfill the duties of a brother-in-law. The first son she bears to him will be considered the son of the dead brother, so that his name, the dead brother, will not be forgotten in Israel. God is about legacy. God is about promoting someone's name all the way through the end of time. That's what God's about. And so here, I'm going to prove to you that Abraham did that, okay? So now, from this point on, everything that we talk about is going to be based on the concept and theory of eboom. Now that you know what it is, if a brother passes away, it's the other brother's job to carry his name on if he's married, okay? To marry his wife and have a child. The first child will be the namesake for the dead brother, okay? So now let's go back to Genesis 11 to the introduction of Abraham and the family, Terah, okay? So we're going to go back again. We're going to read one more time, but we're going to read it with a new understanding, okay? Genesis 11, verse 27. This is the account of Terah's family. Terah was the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Haran was the father of Lot, but Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living, okay? Meanwhile, Abraham and Nahor both married. The name of Aram's wife was Sarah, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Ishka, guess what Ishka's real name is?
I don't know.
Sarai.
Sarai.
He married his niece.
Wow.
Now, this is one of those mysteries where we have to dig and understand. When you go read the book of Jasher, it says very clearly that Ishka is Sarah. When you go read the Talmud, it says that Ishka is Sarai. All throughout all external writings, it tells us that, but it's hidden in the Bible from us because it's a mystery for us to go and seek out. So now we have a new layer, a new depth of understanding Abraham and who he is and what he's doing. They were the daughters of Nahor, daughters of Nahor's brother Aaron. But Sarah was unable to become pregnant and had no children. Okay? So here we are. Let's look at, so Abraham married his dead brother's daughter, Sarai, which in the Bible calls her Ishka.
Ishka.
But it's actually Sarah, okay? Abraham's brother Nahor married Haran's daughter, Milcah. So both brothers are doing a form of eboom
Yeah.
to prolong the dead brother's name from generation to generation to generation. And that's important before we go anywhere else. What is he doing? This is the first time brothers helped each other in the Torah. The first time.
Wow.
Okay? Now, to put this in, so now let's look at the family tree here. So now that we know who's who, here's our family tree. We have Terah, we have Abraham, son Nahor, son Haran, and then we have Sarah, who was Ishka, okay, and then she can't have children. We have Milcah married to Nahor, and we have Lot. And so here's the family tree. So now that we understand this, we can move forward and get a bigger depth and understanding of what God is doing. Okay? All
You
right.
want to take your break here? You
Well,
want
yeah, we can do that before we get into the first brothers.
Yeah.
We can break right here because then we'll go back and tell you about the very first brothers and how they created the situation that led to these brothers redeeming their brother.
You know, a lot of times you read this book and you say, and this begat, this begat. You forget, you say, get rid of the begets, but they're really important.
Oh, yeah. Without the begets, everything I'm teaching you today could not be taught.
Wow.
Without the begots, without the lineage, without understanding who came from who and the order that they came from, you would not be able to understand who is who in the Bible.
And the other thing is, we never would marry a family member.
No. But you got to look at
So
you got to
what
look at the
changed?
time period, okay? We started with 2 people and they populated the entire earth.
Yes.
We wiped out the entire earth and we have 8 people and they have to repopulate the entire earth. So you're going to have a little bit of inmarrying to get things going.
Okay.
But once things get going, then we get a law that says, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay? And then now that you don't have the land,
But
because
that was God's law to do that, wasn't it?
no, this is pre-law.
Pre-law.
This is God telling them what to do, but it's not the law coming down from Mount Sinai that they do to
Deuteronomy,
this
yeah.
day. It's not the law. So this is pre-law.
All righty. Well, you call in your questions. I know this is very interesting. Okay, back to...
All right, so we're talking about Shavuot, we're talking about Pentecost, we're talking about the Book of Ruth, and what in the world do those 3 things have anything to do together?
Or Ruth going
It's
back to
Lauday.
Genesis.
Or going back to Genesis. So we're talking about family lines and lineages. Okay, so we're talking about eboom. Eboom, if you just kept in, is a practice that was done actually pre-law, before the law was given to Moses, that people would do throughout the Word of God. It was perfected in the law as the proper way for doing it, but there are different forms of that, and we're going to show you those forms. Eboom is there's 2 brothers, one dies, the other one's responsible for passing on seed unto the dead brother's wife, so that the first child would be the namesake of the dead brother. Okay?
Yes.
We don't practice that today because it's one man, one woman,
Yes.
traditionally most everywhere.
Can you imagine well, I guess
just
because they were used to that.
Yeah, yeah.
But in today's life,
Well, again, you're populating the earth with just a few people.
Yeah.
And so the rules are different, and then once the law comes, we have things established the proper way to do this, and then it all gets back to land, and we'll talk about the land part of that once we get into the story of Ruth and Boaz. Now, let's go back to the very first brother relationship. There was not brotherly love in this relationship.
No.
Okay, we're going to go to Genesis
Jealousy.
4, 8 through 10. One day, Cain suggested to his brother, let's go into the field. And while they were there in the field,
Yeah.
Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, where is your brother? Where is Abel? I don't know, Cain responded. Am I my brother's guardian or his keeper in some translations? But the Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Okay? So, here we go. At this point in time, Cain nor Abel were married, so there's no way for the brother to step in and pass on Abel's name to the next generation. Abel's wiped out. He's gone. There's no one there to come to bat to him as far as a brother, okay? But this is where the very first act of eboom comes from. It comes from Adam and Eve. Okay, so Genesis 4:25, it says, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth. For God has appointed another seed for me instead of, in place of, what do we say, of Abel. So now, who Cain killed. Now, we have father and mother coming to the aid of Abel and having another son in his stead to prolong the lineage. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's how
that makes sense.
Jewish people understand it, okay?
Yeah.
So now, we're going to skip ahead 10 generations. What happened 10 generations? Now, the number 10 represents testing. Okay, I've taught you that for many, many years. 10 represents testing. That's why God says, give me 10%. It's a test of your tithe, okay? Tithe, 10. Testing. God is testing people. He tested them for 10 generations, and they failed so bad that he sent a flood and destroyed the earth. Noah's the 10th generation from Adam, okay? So now, let's get into Noah's story, where there's another act of eboom, but it's an improper act of eboom, okay? So Genesis 9:18 through 19, the sons of Noah who came out of the boat with his father were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham is the father of Canaan. Now this Canaan keeps showing up. So Canaan, remember, this is where Canaan shows up the first time, but everything we're going to talk about is going to point us back to Canaan, the land and the people. The land and the people. Land and people are one, the way God sees it, okay? From these three sons of Noah came all the people who populated the earth. Okay, so, you know, you're going to have to do a little bit in Mary and Dorothy because we only got three guys here. They're going to populate the entire earth. So what are we going to do? So, you know, they're going to have kids, and they're going to have kids, and they're going to have kids. And everyone's going to keep having kids to do this. So now let's look at the family tree. We've got Noah, we have Shem, we have Ham. Shem's firstborn, Ham's secondborn. Japheth is the thirdborn, okay? Then we have Canaan. Doesn't tell us about anybody else in the family tree, it just tells us Canaan, because Canaan's what's key to the story from this point forward, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, we have this great sin that happened between Noah and Ham, okay? This great sin is awful. It's debated as to what actually happened. It's very awful that happened, but it says in Genesis 9:20 through 27, it says, after the flood, Noah began to cultivate the ground, and he planted a vineyard. One day, he drank some wine he had made and became drunk and lay naked in his tent. Now, let's just pause right there before we go any further, okay? Now, the first sin of the world had to do with a tree.
Yeah.
Now, this next sin that happens, that ushers sin in, has to do with another piece of fruit.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, God's telling us something here. Be careful what you put in your body. Be careful what you fixate on, and be careful what you're doing here, okay? So now he fixated on something he shouldn't have fixated on, and now we pick up our story, Ham, the father of Canaan. That's how we're introduced to Ham. He's the father of Canaan. So Canaan shows up again, saw his father's nakedness, and went out and told his brothers. Now, it's debated as to what happened. But a lot of people believe that he actually sodomized and raped his father here, which caused him not to be able to go forth and multiply like the Bible said for him to do. So he was supposed to have another son, possibly, is believed when you go through, if you go and understand the thing. That's a whole nother teaching I don't have time to get into because I'm trying to cram 15 hours of teaching in the little bit of time we have here today, and that's why I'm going so fast. So I encourage you to get a copy of today's program and watch it over and over again until you get everything. We're going to try to get through everything here because this is 15 hours worth of content we're cramming in as quick as we can.
So
okay?
back to when Ham did this, he had no more children?
Noah had no more children.
Noah had no
Noah had no, because Noah could have, he still could have had children, but after this, he had no more children.
But it
because
wasn't his, well, yeah, it was because he was drunk.
he was drunk. He had
Yeah.
the fruit.
Yeah.
He cultivated it. He let it become fermented. He let it influence him. Okay, and then this happened. Now, he went out and told the brothers. Then Shem and Japheth took a robe. Now this is important. Remember this robe. They took a cloth, and they held it over their shoulders and looked backward, not to see what had been done to him. Okay, to cover their father as they looked away the other way, so they would not see him naked. When Noah woke up from his stupor, he learned what Ham, his youngest son, had done to him. Then he cursed Canaan. He didn't curse Ham, he cursed Canaan because he's wiping out Ham's name through his son, Canaan.
Wow.
So we lost two people here. So we lost Ham and his prolonging his name into another generation, and he destroyed Ham and Canaan by cursing Canaan. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because when a father speaks something over the child,
It's
it
done.
manifests, and that's what's going to happen from this point on. So this curse follows them the rest of their lives. Now this is the curse. May Canaan be cursed. May he be the lowest of servants to his relatives. All right? Then it says, then Noah said, may the Lord, the God of Shem, be blessed, his firstborn. May Canaan be his servant. And may God expand the territory of Japheth. May Japheth share the prosperity of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. So he's made a servant or a slave to the rest of the family because of the action of the father.
You know, that just doesn't seem fair.
Well,
I know God did it, but why didn't he do Ham?
huh?
He should have cursed Ham was the one that did
Well,
it.
he did the exact same thing that God did. Did God curse Adam, or did he curse the ground?
He cursed the ground.
He didn't curse Adam. He didn't curse the one that did. He cursed the ground, and now you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
He followed the pattern. The pattern's there. Patterns repeat over and over all throughout the word. So Noah, acting instead of God, cursed not the son, but the grandson. The same way God didn't curse Adam, but cursed the land. Patterns repeat when you start seeing these things from a Hebraic point of view. So now, let's go back to our family tree. We have Noah, we have Shem, and now we have a dead Ham as far as lineage going, and then we have a dead Canaan as far as lineage going, and then we have Japheth, okay? And so here we are. We got this eboom moment, but the eboom moment, Dorothy, was the brothers redeeming the father, not the other brother. No one came to the other brother's aid. So we got a defective form of eboom. So we got father and mother coming to the son's aid and having another son. Now we have two brothers coming to the father's aid to deliver the father, but no one redeems the son. So it's defective. This eboom is not working the way it is supposed to, okay? So now, and here we go. The children come today. The parent, father, is covered and protected. The brother and his sons are destroyed. The family has been fractured even more. So this is the dysfunctional family, okay? Now, Abraham and Nahor are the first brothers to come to a brother's aid. 10 generations later, Dorothy, we have the story of Abraham and Nahor, and they come to the aid of their dead brother. Okay?
Wow.
So now, let's go into another story here, okay? So, I'm going to tell you another form of defective or wrong type of Ibu, okay? Prolonging the brother's name, okay? Now, we're getting to the story of Lot, okay? Now, Lot has got some serious issues. Now, this is the dead brother's son. This is the lineage of the dead brother.
Yes.
Abraham, Nahor, Haran, the dead brother Haran. This is his lineage. This is his son, okay? Now, Genesis 19, 1 through 8. It says, that evening the two angels came to the entrance of the city of Sodom. Lot was sitting there, and when he saw them, he stood up to meet them. Then he welcomed them and bowed with his face to the ground. My lords, he said, come to my home to wash your feet and be my guests for tonight. You may then get up early in the morning and be on your way. Now, this is really interesting wording. Why would you come now for the night and leave early before anyone sees you leave? What does Lot know? Lot knows the people of Sodom have that name for a reason. Okay, and we're going to find out why here in the next verse here. They said, oh no, they replied, we'll just spend the night out here in the city square. Okay, But Lot insisted, so at last they went with him. Lot prepared a feast for them, complete with fresh bread made without yeast, matzah, okay?
Matzah.
And they ate. And now this is a pre-story, a form of the Pesach type situation going on here because it's unleavened bread. That's important. He did Pesach before Pesach was known, Passover, okay? From the way the Jewish people believe. But before they retired for the night, all the men of Sodom, not some men, all the men, the young men, the teenagers, the little guys, all the way up to the oldest men, came over the city, all over the city, and surrounded the house. Okay? Then shouted to Lot, "Where are the two men who came to spend the night with you? Bring them out here so that we may have sex with them." So Lot stepped outside to talk with them, shutting the door behind him. "Please, my brothers," he begged, "don't do such a wicked thing. Look, I have two virgin daughters. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them as you wish. But please leave these men alone, for they are my guests and under my protection." Well, pardon me, but my daughters would be under my protection long before a guest would be.
Yeah.
Lot has got a serious screw loose or a situation going on here where he doesn't understand priorities.
Yes.
Your daughters should be more valuable to you, and you protect them over someone you just met.
Yeah.
He has a defective way of looking at things, okay? And so that defective way of looking at things and the way he treats his daughters is what leads to the next event that happens, okay? And so let's skip ahead a little bit here. We're going to get to Genesis 19:30 through 38. Afterwards, Lot left for Zoar because he was afraid of the people there, and he went to live in a cave in the mountains with his two daughters. One day, the older daughter said to her sister, "There is no man left anywhere in the entire area, so we can't get married like everyone else. And our father will soon be too old to have children." Do you see the eboom?
Yeah.
They're trying to prolong his name.
Yes.
They are trying to prolong Lot's name so that he lives on through descendants, because they believe that the world is ended. There's no men left. There's no one to marry. So just like Adam and Eve populated the earth, just like Noah and his sons populated the earth, they feel it's their job to populate the earth. But listen to how the story goes, okay? "Come, let's get him drunk with wine." That sounds familiar. When did that happen?
Yes.
And the last story that we read, okay? He got drunk with wine. So let's get our father drunk with wine, and we will have sex with him. That way we will preserve our family line through our father, the eboom. But it's coming through perversion.
Yeah.
This is a perverted, perverse eboom. So that night they got him drunk with wine, and the older daughter went and had intercourse with her father. He was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. So here we go. We have perversion. Because they don't understand their value, because their father didn't put the value that they should have on them, now they're dysfunctional and don't understand what they're called to do and who they're called to be. And they think they're alone and they're going to repopulate the earth, okay? Now we go a little bit further on in the story. The next morning, the older daughter said to her younger sister, "I had sex with our father last night. Let's get him drunk with wine again tonight, and you go in and have sex with him. That way we will preserve our family line through our father." Eboom. Here we are again talking about eboom. They're both trying to preserve their father's name. They're doing it through incest. They're doing it through perversion to create the father's name and give him a lineage to go forward, okay? Now, so that night they got him drunk with wine again, and the younger daughter went in and had intercourse with him. As before, he was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. As a result, both Lot's daughters became pregnant by their own father. Okay? So, Lot has screwed up understanding of family. His daughters have screwed up understanding of family. And then, here we go and have these two sons. Okay? Now, in 37, we pick up, when the older daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Moab. Moab. Okay? Now, he became the ancestor of the nation known as the Moabites. This is where Ruth comes from and why this is so important. When the younger daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Ben-Ammi. he became the ancestor of the nation known as the Amorites. So we got this, our family's getting bigger.
Yeah.
Our family's getting bigger, okay? So here we go, the family's getting bigger. Now let's look at our family tree here, okay? We got Lot. Now the daughters have no names. We got older daughter, we got younger daughter. They don't have names. Their names are not important as far as the Bible is concerned. They're not giving us the names.
There's Moab.
And then we have Moab from the older daughter, and then we have Ben-Ammi, the Amorites, from the younger daughter. And so here we are. We're starting to see where the people are coming from. But without the genealogy, we would never know. So it's important that we pay attention to the genealogy. Now, what's really interesting is the names they give these two boys. These names are horrible. Moab means from father. I got you from daddy. I'm incest. He's constantly reminded of the incest by his name. Moab means from father. He was conceived from her father. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So his whole
Grandpa.
name is a reminder of the abomination.
Yes.
Okay, Ben-Ammi means son of my kinsman. Same thing. So they're both given names that mean you came from daddy. You came from somebody else. And here we are. Daddy got us pregnant. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can you see that where the issue comes in? But we're not done yet. We have another eboom story. What's the next eboom story? Eboom story is Genesis 38. Now, what's really interesting, Genesis 38 happens right in the middle of the Joseph story. So we're learning about Joseph. We're learning that Joseph is sold into slavery. We learn that Judah is responsible for him being sold into slavery. It was his idea. So he's got leadership skills. He doesn't quite understand how to preserve and love his brother. So we have family issues with Cain and Abel, okay, not understanding how to love the brother.
Yes.
Then we got family issues with Noah and his sons, two sons not knowing how to love the brother, okay? And now here we come where we have also Jacob, who fights with Esau over the birthright, okay, even from the womb, and they have brother issues. And so those brother issues are being passed down from generation to generation, okay? So here we are. We got Judah. He doesn't like his brother because should not be treated like the firstborn. Joseph's being treated like the firstborn. He's not happy about it. So now he says, look, let's get rid of him. Let's not kill him because we don't benefit from that, but let's sell him to the Ishmaelites, sell him into slavery. And then the problem's gone, okay?
Good luck.
So in the process of doing that, he actually gets kicked out of the family.
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually what this story is telling us about, where we picked up, where he gets kicked out of the family. Now, Genesis 38, 1 through 11. At about this time, Judah left and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hera. There he saw a Canaanite woman. What was the woman there, Dorothy?
Canaanite.
Canaan. Here we go. Canaan enters the story again. Canaan's been cursed. Canaan has no place in the world as far as Noah said. But here's a Canaanite woman that Judah marries. So Canaan's back in the picture. Okay? Now, was the daughter of Shu, and he married her. When he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and he named the boy Er. Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, and she named him Onan. And when she gave birth to the third son, she named him Shelah. At the time of Shelah's birth, they were living in Kezbith. In the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn son Er to marry a young woman named Tamar. So now, here we have the story of Tamar. Tamar's entering in. We have 3 sons that are conceived from a Canaanite woman in Judah. The lineage of the king is coming, okay? Right. So we pick up our story in verse 7. But Er was a wicked man in the Lord's sight, so the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to Er's brother Onan, go marry Tamar, here we go, Ebu, as our law requires. Whose law is that? The law wasn't given yet, Dorothy.
No.
So this was a custom that the people already had pre-law. This is a pre-Torah law. Torah being the law, pre-law giving, that you would go and produce an heir for your dead brother so that his name does not end.
Wow.
God's about family. God's about legacy. And that's what we're learning through this story, okay? So, now, Law requires the brother of a man who has died, you must produce an heir for your brother. But Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his own heir. So whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground. All right. So Onan, he's going to get his satisfaction. He's going to do what makes him feel good, but he's not going to give to his dead brother and fulfill the need. He's getting pleasure, but not giving pleasure.
Yeah.
He's a selfish man, and God don't like that. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. But the Lord considered it evil for Onan to deny a child to his dead brother. So the Lord took Onan's life too.
Wow.
Judah lost 2 sons with 1 woman. Now Judah's scared. Okay? So Judah's got a 3rd son, but he's too young to be married. Okay? And so we'll pick the story up here in verse 11. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, go back to your parents' home and remain a widow until my son Shelah is old enough to marry you. But Judah didn't really intend to do this because he was afraid Shelah would also die like his other 2 brothers. So Tamar went back to live in her father's home. So he's fearful that he's going to lose his last heir. And so he's not going to do the right thing and give Shelah to Tamar.
Wow.
Because he thinks Tamar's the reason that they died, not knowing that his son is the one that spilled the seed. Both of his sons were evil.
Yes.
Okay? Now, so let's look at the situation here. We have our family line. We got Judah. We have Onan, or we have Er, which is who married Tamar. We have Onan, the one that was supposed to come into Tamar and produce an heir for and they're both gone. No heir has been produced, and we have Shelah. Shelah is believed to be about 10 years old at this particular time, so he was too young to marry. So at least 10 years she lived as a widow waiting for him to grow up. That's important. She waited. She waited for Judah to do the right thing, but Judah chose not to do the right thing. And Judah's got a history of not doing the right thing. Sold his brother into slavery. Judah's got issues. Judah's passed those issues down to Er and Onan. A little selfish, concerned about themselves, wicked men, okay? Now, let's pick our story up some years later, starting in verse 12 of Genesis 38. Some years later, Judah's wife died, okay? So now the wife died. After the time of mourning was over, Judah and his friend Haran, the Adullamite, went up to Timman to supervise the shearing of his sheep. Someone told Tamar, look, your father-in-law is going up to Tamar to shear the sheep. Tamar was aware that Shelah had grown up, but no arrangements had been made for her to come and marry him. Okay? So, that's important. She was left alone.
Yeah, all the
Childless, husbandless, widowless. This was a heartless thing to do to someone. He just left her there. And so Judah's about to get what Judah deserves.
Yeah.
But in time, it's going to be a good thing. So, she changed out of her widow's clothing and covered herself with a veil to disguise herself. Then she sat beside the road at the entrance to the village of Enon, which is on the road to Timiam. Judah noticed her and thought she was a prostitute, since she had covered her face. So he stopped and propositioned her, let me have sex with you, he said, not realizing that she was his own daughter-in-law. How much will you pay me to have sex, she asked. Now let's just pause here before we go to the next part of the verse here, okay? Now, Judah is no longer married because his wife is done. He's not committing adultery in that respect. Now, he's supposed to be married before you do these type of actions, but he's not committing adultery because his wife has passed away. Okay?
Yes.
So you read that sometimes and you just think there's even more issues going on here. Okay, so his dead wife has passed away. He's mourned her. He's done the proper things. And, feeling lonely, goes to a prostitute, which happens to be his daughter-in-law. Talk about irony. All right. So now we're going to pick up in 17. I will send you. So now we're given intimate details on the transaction for the sexual favor. Okay?
Yeah.
Well, this is pretty private information right here,
Yeah.
So I will send you a young goat from my flock, Judah promised. But What will you give me to guarantee that you will send the goat? She asked. What kind of guarantee do you want? He replied. She answered, leave me your identification seal and its cord and the walking stick you carry. So Judah gave them to her. Then he had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. Afterwards, she went back home, took off their veil, and put on the widow's clothing again. Okay, so now she ends up with this coat. Okay, all right, now we had a coat in the previous story. All right, the two guys walk back with a coat to cover up the father's nakedness. Right. Now he's getting naked, getting rid of his coat. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so we got this coat that is covering the father's shame of what his son did to him. And now we've got another father taking his coat off and having intercourse with a prostitute, which happens to be his in-law. Okay, we got another eboom story. It's not quite right, because the father should not be going into the son's wife. It should be the brother going to the son's, to the brother's wife. You see what I'm saying? So again, it's not right yet. It's not perfected. It's not where it's supposed to be. Okay, so now.
These are such characters. We never think about these guys.
I know. So it's crazy how the mindset and the things were this. And again, this is pre-law. So think of it the Wild West. People just kind of did whatever they desired to do. There wasn't a law to ring them in and tell them the proper way to do things. Pre-law. The law comes, several generations later. So now, we're going to pick up in verse 24 of Genesis 38. About 3 months later, Judah was told, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has acted like a prostitute. Yeah, with you. And now, because of this, she is pregnant. Okay, bring her out. Now, let's go back a little bit. At this particular time, Judah is considered the judge of this area that he's at. So he is responsible for condemning people or deciding who lives, who dies, and what's going on. So Judah is the one here. He is the judge, okay? It says that earlier in the chapter, okay? Bring her out, let her be burned, Judah demanded, okay? Yeah, well, wait till you see what happens next. But as they were taking her out to kill her, she sent a message to the father, the man who owns these things made me pregnant. Look closely whose seal and cord and walking stick are these, or coat, and in one translation it says coat, are these, okay? Judah recognizes them immediately and said, she is more righteous than I, because I did not arrange for her to marry my son Shelah. And Judah never slept with Tamar again. So Judah recognized, this is Judah's redeeming factor. This is what put Judah back in line for the kingship to come through his lineage, because he recognized he was wrong. He did not recognize he was wrong when he sold his brother into slavery. He did not recognize he was wrong in the act that he committed with Tamar, but when the items were brought back to him, he recognized and admitted his wrongdoing. This is where he redeemed himself and allowed himself to be put back in line for the kingship. Okay, do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so redemption comes because of our actions and what we do. Now let's pick up in 27 of Genesis 38. When the time came for Tamar to give birth, it was discovered that she was carrying twins. Well, that's interesting. We have twins. Yeah. So both brothers were redeemed, Dorothy. Both dead brothers were redeemed.
Yeah, because she had twins.
So she had twins. So the one went in and spilled his seed, and the other one died because he was an evil man. But she was given two sons to keep both names going forth. Okay? Now, while she was in labor, one of the babies reached his hand out. The midwife grabbed it and tied a scarlet string around the child's wrist, announcing, this one came out first. But then he pulled back his hand and came his brother. What? The midwife explained, how did you break out first? So she named him Perez. All right? Then the baby with the scarlet string on his wrist was born, and he was named Zerah. Okay, so here we go. We've got two sons being born. These two sons being born are redeeming the two dead sons, okay? And so let's go back over here to our family tree lineage. We have Judah. He had three sons. He had Er. He had Onan. He had Shelah. Er was an evil man. He died. God killed him. Onan went unto Tamar, but he spilled the seed and would not give an heir to his brother.
Right.
So God killed him. Judah unknowingly redeemed both of his sons by going unto Tamar, and was given two sons, which are sons of Judah, Perez, and Zerah. Perez is the line of Boaz. This is where Boaz comes from Perez, to break forth, to break through. So what happened is in this action that he did with his sister-in-law, that he did with his sister-in-law, daughter-in-law, to deal with his daughter-in-law, created the breakthrough for him to come back into proper standing with God and create the lineage which created David, which would later create Jesus, which would save us all from sin.
Amazing.
Do you see it?
Yes, I do. I see
Okay.
it. So good.
Now, what's so interesting is names have meanings. Okay, these names have meaning. The first son, means watchful, to wake up. Okay, to lift up, to rise, or to stir up. Now, if eboom is done properly, okay, the dead brother will wake up and continue to live on. And his name, before he even was named, that's what his name means. To wake up and move on and continue on. Okay, that's what his name means. Now, Onan, his name means ability, power, strong, and vigorous. Now, when you look up the word vigorous, it means the power within the belly or loins for reproduction or creative work. He had the ability to do the right thing, but he spilled the seed. That's why he was evil. His name is what caused him to die. Do you see that? His name caused him to die. Then Sheila, his name means petition. So made a petition. So she had a petition. Hey, send me Sheila. So petitions being promised, but it's not going to happen because Judah's scared. He's not going to lose his third son, his last son. Okay. But we have Perez, which means breach, bursting forth, or to outburst, to break through. We have to break through. Here comes a breakthrough. And then we have Zahar, which means scarlet, brightness, or rising. And so here we are. This is the lineage that comes from Judah as we go forward.
We'll take a break. We're going to go to a song, and we come back. This is so interesting. I'm telling you, Chris, who gets this kind of stuff? This is why God kept you up talking about.
I know, He kept me up all night long. We'll share our final eboom story when we come back, and we'll tie it all together, and then we'll bring Jesus into the picture, which is really exciting part.
This is so good because you never hear this. You don't, ever study it like this.
Yeah.
But it's all makes sense.
It does make sense. Once you
Every
look
bit of it.
We look at things from a Christian point of view where we read the New Testament and we focus there. We never go back because we're scared that if we read the Old Testament, we'll get under the law. Well, just reading the Old Testament is not going to put you under the law.
No.
It's going to empower you to understand what really goes on so that when you have the freedom, you understand where your freedom came from. What are you set free from? You don't know your future until you know your past.
Now, let's go to the next part, the final
eboom.
Mm-hmm,
All right, we have our final eboom story. This is the eboom story
It
that
stopped
fixes it.
there, or does it go through the whole Old Testament?
Well, this is as far as I've studied it.
Okay.
Remember, we're talking about Shavuot, which is Law Day. And in Law Day, the Jewish people read the book of Ruth. And you're like, why? Ruth wasn't there. Ruth has nothing to do with the law. What does this mean? Anything? She's an outsider. Why would we read the outsider book when we're doing Law Day, which later becomes Pentecost for us when the Spirit comes and falls on the earth? And so here we are doing our last thing here. So we're going to try and cram all this in this short time that we have. We're going to pick up in Ruth chapter 1, verse 1 through 5. And it says, in the days when the judges ruled in Israel. So we have a time frame. There's judges, okay? A severe famine came upon the land. So a man from Bethlehem, which means bread, house of bread.
Yeah,
okay,
house of bread.
in Judah, okay? So if you live in Judah, you are a son or a descendant of Judah because you lived in the area that you were from, okay? Left his home, and now this is after the law has been given. So for people to understand, the law has been given at this point, okay? We're like several generations and beyond. This is 10 generations after Abraham. So this is 10 generations after Abraham. This is the 10th generation. We're talking about Boaz and Ruth. So 10 generations. So God's doing things in tens. From Adam to Noah was 10 generations. Noah to Abraham is 10 generations. And Abraham to Ruth and Boaz is 10 generations. So here we are 10 generations later. Okay? So 30. Remember that. It's going to be important at the end. All right, so a famine comes upon the land. This is a lineage of Judah. Leaves his home, went to the country, and lived in the country of Moab, taking his wife and his sons with him. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. Their 2 sons were Mahon and Kilon, and they were Ephrathites, which means the part of Bethlehem that they were in the land. And they reached Moab and settled there. What did they do? What did we say? Well, you're not supposed to do what?
You're not supposed to settle.
Don't settle. Settling's a bad thing. All right? Now, it's also said...
They settled there for 10 years, by the way.
10 years, exactly. It's also said that he was a very, very wealthy, rich man and had land and had property and stuff. And so now, here's what happens. And this is why everything happens to the rest of them in the story. He was a wealthy man. A famine comes. He could have stayed to help brother. But no, he went and took care of himself. And so all the tragedy that happens from this point on is because they left the land they were supposed to be in, settled in another land, and in that other land they settled in, tragedy happened, okay? So now let's pick back up in verse 3. Then Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with her 2 sons. The sons married Moabite women. Okay, now, let's just stop right there. From an eboom point of view, they just destroyed the father's name. Father's name is destroyed because you can't marry, after the law, you can't marry outsider and prolong the name. They just killed his name. His name is dead. At this point in time, because they married Moabite women, they are not Jewish, they are not Israeli, they are not from their tribe. They have utterly destroyed their lineage. They can't go forward, okay? So let's keep that in mind right there. One married a woman named Oprah, and the other one married a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Melahon and Kilion died. This left Naomi alone with her, without her 2 sons or her husband. Okay, so Naomi's alone. She's got two daughter-in-laws that she's with, and so we have this situation. Now let's go back and look at these guys' names. The men's names in the story will tell us a whole lot about what's going on here. Okay, Elimelech means my God is king. My God is king. He supplies everything I have need of, but I want to leave and go over here to Moabite where things are, and you guys suffer on your own.
Yeah, the water they said was pure over there. And
Yep.
he went over there for that.
Yeah, exactly. And so he benefited the south. Now, Melahon means sick. Now, this is the one that Ruth married. Ruth married Melahon. Okay, it means sick. Well, guess what? If you're sick, you can get well.
Yes, you can.
Okay, so if you're asleep, you can be awoken, and the lineage continues. But if you're sick, you can get well, and you can continue to come back and still survive.
Yes.
Okay. Kilion's name meant destruction. He's died. He's gone forever. There's nothing left because Oprah, we'll learn what happened with Oprah next. All right, let's go back to our timeline here. So we look at the dead people. The people in gray are dead. Elimelech and Naomi, they have 2 sons. Kilion the older, marries Oprah and have no sons because before he dies. Melahon marries Ruth. There's no sons. There's no lineage. There's nowhere to go from here. It's done. The family tree is over. There's nothing they can do to restore it. So let's pick up our story in verse 6 of Ruth 1, okay? Then Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had blessed the people in Judah by giving them good crops again. So Naomi and her daughter-in-laws got ready to leave Moab to return to her homeland. With her 2 daughter-in-laws, she set out from the place where she had been living, and they took the road that would lead back to Judah. But on the way, Naomi said to her 2 daughters, "Go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to who? Your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage." That's eboom. So we're talking about eboom again. She's like, bless you for wanting to come with me and try to prolong my dead son and my husband's legacy, but there is no one for you to marry.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. Okay, so let's carry on with the story. Then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. "No," they said, "we want to go with you to your people." But Naomi replied, here we go, we got eboom again. Why should you go with me? Can I give birth to other sons who could grow up to be your husbands? So are they willing to wait 20 years for her to have a child? They wait 20 years.
And she's not even married.
And she's not even married.
No, she couldn't.
And she's at the point where she's probably too old to even have children at this point. So she's showing them, this is hopeless. This is never going to happen. We can't make this happen even if we try, okay? And then it says, no, my daughters, return to your parents' home, for I am too old to marry again. And even if it was possible, I get married tonight and bear sons, then what?
Yeah.
Then what? What's going to happen then? Well, let's find out. Would you wait for them to grow up and refuse to marry someone else? No, of course not, my daughter. Things are far more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord himself has raised his fist against me. Why does she say that? Because they were wealthy. They left their brothers behind.
Yes.
Okay, so she's making reference. We left our brothers behind, okay? And again they wept. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, said goodbye, but Ruth clung tightly to Naomi. Look, Naomi said to her, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people, to her other gods. You should do the same. But Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you or turn back. Wherever you will go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said nothing more. So here we are. We're on this journey. So as the journey continues, let's move forward to what happens once they get to Israel. So they get into Judah. And so now Ruth 1:22, Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by her daughter-in-law, Ruth, the young Moabite woman. They arrived in Bethlehem, the late spring, the beginning of Harvest Festival. And here we are. I've got my bread over here. We're going to talk about the bread here at the very end, but I've got my bread right here that we're going to talk about. We got the two types. We have the unleavened bread and we have the leavened bread. Okay, we're going to talk about that, but it's barley season. So this is in the time frame that it should be in for the festival. So it's our first clue. Or we're in the right time frame. This is the time that God spoke to him and told him to Omar, and on Shavuot, bring the last harvest in, and here we are for barley harvest. So we're barley harvest, all right? So we're in the time of Shavuot. Okay, now the events of everything that took place and Ruth are taking place during the counting of Omar. I've been telling you about Omar for the past 50 days, the counting of weeks. And so here we are. This story's taken place and what we've been talking about for the past 50 days, okay? Now, let's look at Ruth 2, 8 through 12. Boaz went over and said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, stay right here with us when you gather grain. Do not go to other fields. Stay right behind the young women working in my field. See which part of the field they are harvesting and then follow them. I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly. And when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water that were drawn from the well. Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. What have I done to deserve such kindness? And she said, I am only a foreigner. Yes, I know, Boaz replied. But now we're going to go back to what did Abraham? This is the same thing we read at the beginning about Abraham. What set Abraham apart? I know about everything you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I have heard how you left father and mother and your own land to come live here as a complete stranger. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come, take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done. Okay, so here we are. This is we have the male version of Abraham. We have the female version of Abraham. Two people are becoming from their way of doing things into this one family. Okay, so here we go. Let's pick up in Ruth 3, verse 1 through 11. One day Naomi said to Ruth, my daughter, it's time that I found you a permanent home, so that you will be provided. Our Boaz is a close relative of ours, and he's been very kind by letting you gather grain with his young women. Tonight, he will be at the winnowing barley at the threshing floor. Okay? Now, this is the end. This is the end of harvest season. This is Shavuot.
Shavuot.
When the promise comes. The promise is coming, okay?
Yeah.
Now, do as I tell you. Take a bath, put on your perfume, and dress in your nicest clothes. Then go to the threshing floor, but don't let Boaz see you until he's finished eating and drinking. We got alcohol in here again. We got more wine.
More wine.
Okay? We got the opportunity for another perversion to come in here, okay? But be sure to notice where he lies down. Go and uncover his feet and lie down there, and he will tell you what to do. I will do everything you said, Ruth replied. So she went down to the threshing floor that night, followed the instructions of her mother-in-law. After Boaz had finished drinking and eating and drinking, and is in good spirits, he laid down a pile of grain and went to sleep. Then Ruth came quietly, uncovered his feet, and laid down. We have the starting of the Tamar story. We have the starting of the Lot and his daughter's story. We have the drunkenness. We have an opportunity for seduction or something to happen.
But
okay?
it didn't.
But it didn't. Around midnight, Boaz suddenly woke up. When does God show up? At midnight.
Midnight.
All right.
You know,
and turn
don't you?
over. He was surprised to find a woman laying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I'm your servant Ruth. She replied, spread the corners of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer. She's telling him who he is. And he says, you have the opportunity to redeem me and Naomi and all the men of this line. You have the opportunity. And he says, the Lord bless you, my daughter, Boaz explained. You are showing even more family loyalty now than you did before. We're talking about when she was gathering grain and feeding her mother-in-law. You're doing even more because you didn't go after a younger man or a richer man or a poorer man. You came after me because he's significantly older than her, okay? Now, don't worry about a thing, my daughter. I will do what is necessary for everyone in town knows you are a virtuous woman. Now, can I tell you a little secret? I'm not going to teach on this. I'm not going into detail on this. It says that they know that she's a virtuous woman. Solomon knew Ruth. Proverbs 31 is about Ruth. Go read it and go read this story and look and see. Proverbs 31, the virtuous woman. It says right here she's a virtuous woman. Okay? This is great-great-grandmother. Okay? Great-great-great-grandmother. He would have known her. He is writing about her in Proverbs 31. That's a little nugget for you right there. So take it and enjoy that, okay? Now, let's continue on with the story. So Ruth lay at Boaz's feet until morning, okay? Now, the same thing happened with Lot, with the guest. He's trying to bring them in so no one sees them and try to get them out before anyone sees them leave. You see it? The same thing's happening here with Ruth, but it's happening the right way. Okay? She got up before it was light enough for people to recognize each other. For Boaz said, no one must know that a woman was here at the threshing floor. Then Boaz said to her, bring your cloak. Your what? Your cloak.
Your cloak.
Oh, we got a coat again. Okay?
And spread it out.
All right? The brothers of Noah had a cloak. All right? Judah had a cloak, a coat. Okay? And now we have her coat. Okay? Now bring it, spread it out. And he measured 6 scoops of barley in the cloak, a promise, and placed it on her back and then sent her to return to town. When Ruth went back to her mother-in-law, Naomi said, what happened, my daughter? Ruth told Naomi everything Boaz had done for her and added, he gave me these 6 scoops of barley and said, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. The promise was given. It's Shavuot.
It's Shavuot.
Promise is given. What are we supposed to wait in the upper room for the Pentecost, for the Spirit to come? It's the promise. It is coming. It is Shavuot. Then Naomi said to her, just be patient, my daughter. What were they supposed to do in the upper room? Sit, wait, be patient until we hear what happens. What were they supposed to do? Wait and hear. And what did they hear? They heard the Spirit come in like a mighty rushing wind. Then the man won't rest until he has settled things today. So he's going to take care of this today. Now is the day of your redemption draws near, okay? So here we are. We're there. We're doing it, okay? Now, let's go to Ruth 4. We'll skip ahead to Ruth 4, 9 through 12. Then Boaz said to the elders and to the crowd standing around, you are witnessing today that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Melion, and with the land I have acquired Ruth, the Moabite, widow of Melion, to be my wife. This way she can have a son to carry on the family name of her dead husband and to inherit the family property here in his hometown. You are all witnesses today. Eboom, done, perfected, the right way. Then the elders and all the people standing at the gate where you are, we are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, the founders. The founders.
Yes.
Okay, the female founders, from whom all the nations of Israel descended. May you prosper in Ephraim and be famous in Bethlehem. And may the Lord give you descendants by this young woman who will be like those of our ancestor Perez, the son of Tamar in Judah. the family story comes back in. It's complete.
All back in,
okay?
complete.
So now, let's look at the family line very quickly. We got Boaz and Eliab. They're basically brothers. They're cousins. They're so the same family line. Judah's above them. Elimelech is going on to Naomi. Chilion is dead. Melihan is dead. Melihan marries Ruth. He dies. Ruth then is with Boaz. Boaz then has, and Ruth has Obed, Jesse, King David. Here we go. Here we go. The family line. Here we go. Then the king can come, and then the King of Kings will come from there. Okay. Now, let's get the 10,000 aerial view here. Okay, of everything, because what God did is restored the entire family. Yes. That's what this is about. So now let's go to our slide. Terah, right here at the top. We have Terah has Abraham, Nahor, Haran. Haran has Lot, Milcah, and Sarah. Abraham and Sarah have Isaac. Nahor and Milcah have Bethuel. Bethuel has Rebekah and Laban. Isaac marries Rebekah. Rebekah and Isaac have Jacob. Jacob marries Laban's daughter Leah and Rachel. Then Judah comes. Judah has Perez. Perez has Hezron, Ram, Amminadab, Nahshon, and then Boaz. Boaz comes in as the redeemer to Elimelech, Chilion, Nelion, and Naomi. He marries Ruth. But wait, where did Ruth come from? Look at the top.
Moab.
Came from Lot.
Lot.
The whole family's back together. The whole family. He's about the whole family. The whole family's back together. And when the whole family comes back together, we get the King David.
That's awesome teaching.
King David's here. Now, let's go back to the first verse that we started with. This is the account of whose family?
Terrace.
Not Abraham's family. This is Terah's family. And Terah's family is Abraham, Nahor, and Haran.
Wow.
And not only were they redeemed, but Canaan was redeemed as well, because Judah married a Canaanite.
My, oh my.
God is about restoration.
Yes, he is.
And how does he restore us? He restored them by giving them a law on law day. He gave them the law on law day. But that law was manifest in Jesus. Now let's go to the sign. All year long, when they came to the temple, this is what they brought. They brought unleavened bread, because leaven represented sin.
Yeah.
They brought unleavened bread. Except for one day, the day of Shavuot, where they brought bread that was leavened. Get a wide shot. Pull out on me there, sir. Get a wide shot. They brought the leaven. It's a wave offering.
Yeah,
this
wave
represents
offering.
sin. And who spread his arms out and
Yeah.
took care of all sin? The wave offering.
Yes.
The wave offering. Jesus. Jesus comes. It's about Jesus.
Yeah.
Bringing the family back together with the wave offering. Sin in each hand, outstretched on the cross. He died for you. It comes full circle. The sin is no more. It no longer has power because I've given you what? The Holy Spirit to help you overcome every single sin.
Chris, that is awesome. That is awesome. And you know, in my bride print, I showed Jesus with the wheat, first fruit offering, giving a wave offering for us as his children. What a wonderful teaching. So how many would like him to put it in a book? Just give us a call. I'd love to hear from you. I'm always thinking of books for Chris because he puts things together so good. Thank you so much, and we'll be back next time. Bye-bye.